I'm one of those guys that I focus on what I call nothing but the basics. And I don't care what it is we're talking about. If it's groundwork, I work on fundamentals and basics. If I'm working on under saddle, everything's basics. And I'm going to tell you guys a really quick story so you'll understand why I focus on the basics. Every other thing that I want to do, let's say it's, for example, how many of you guys are really handy doing flying lead changes? Nobody. Okay. How about horses that do 20-foot sliding stops if there's a need? Nobody. Good. How about horses that will spin a hole in the dirt? How about a horse that'll score 74 plus on a cow? Good. We got one there. So the thing is, most people regard those as fairly complex, and are we going to work on anything other than the basics? And I usually tell people, no, we're probably just going to work on the basics. And here's why. Many years ago, I went to a school in Campbell, Texas. And if anybody knows where Campbell is, I'll kiss your big toe. Good. My lips are safe. Campbell is a little bitty town, about 60 miles northeast of Dallas. If I would have continued to go to school there, I'd have been one of 8, maybe 6 in my graduating class. Little bitty town. Because it was so small, perhaps, I don't know, but we didn't get a whole lot of what I'd call foundation education. By the time I got out of 8th grade, I realized, man, if I'm going to go to college, I'm going to have to get out of Campbell and go to a school that's going to be a little bit more challenging, that can prepare me a little bit better for college than Campbell could. So I transferred to Commerce School, and when I transferred there, I found out I was going to have to take a class I knew nothing about, had never even heard the word, quite frankly, until I got to my high school counselor as a freshman, and that class was algebra. If I was going to go to college, I had to have algebra as a freshman. Well, sounds easy enough, so of course I signed up for it. I figured, I'm a smart kid, I can figure this out. Well, I go to the class and get my book on the very first day, and I opened the book like all the other students did, and I was just immediately blown away. I began to look at all the X's and the Y's and the parentheses and the lines, and I was as lost as a ball in high weeds. I mean, I had no idea what that book was about and what I was looking at. So the way that my teacher, and first I want to have to describe my teacher too, because if that didn't intimidate me enough, the teacher did. I love her to death now, but back then she was the most intimidating person you ever saw in your life, because she was a big lady. She was probably the ugliest person you ever saw. She had the permanent scowl on her face, and she could just as easily worn her pants backwards as she could have frontwards, because she had one of those great old big bellies that was like really low in the front. So she just intimidated the heck out of me. So here's this ugly lady with a grouchy voice, and she had an ugly figure. And I mean, what was there to like? And on top of that, she taught some subject that nobody can pronounce the word. Well, I go to that class, I see her, I'm scared to death, and her way of teaching, I found out, was to make everybody go to the chalkboard. Nonetheless, that was her way of teaching. Well, the first 2 weeks go by, and I didn't get called to the front of the class, and I'm thinking, man, I'm doing good, I'm not getting called up there, but I still don't know what this darn book is about. I have no idea what she's talking about when she's working with students with these problems on the board. Well, my luck ran out, and finally she called me up to the front of the class. And I'm standing up there with all these new eyeballs. I didn't know any of these kids that I was in class with. I was a new student. So here's all these new eyeballs staring at the back of my skull. And here's the ugliest lady I'd ever set eyes on to my left. And I'm staring at this board with this huge thing up there with just all these symbols and numbers. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I guess she could hear my knees rattling, because finally she just leaned back in her chair and it squeaks and she places her hand on that big old belly. Mr. Hargis, can you add